Hey, this is Ted Cookerly, the washed-up former lead singer of Everyday Life. You're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast with Mr. Jeremy Alan Gould. Stick around. You don't want to miss what's next.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Alan Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Hey, thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Scott Hunter. You know Scott from the band Poor Old Lou. What an amazing opportunity for this podcast to have Scott on to talk about the past, the present, the future. So honored he'd take time to spend with me. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Scott Hunter. Scott Hunter, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. It's been a long time coming, man.
It's been a long time, Jeremy. It's good to see you. It's good to hear from you.
Yes.
Have I been one of the more difficult people to finally get me nailed down?
I would absolutely 150% agree with that. But you know what? It was well worth it. It was well worth it.
You know what? It was well worth it. Well, we hope.
Well, yeah, who is to say? I mean, this could go off the rails. I mean, for sure.
This could be horrible. And, yeah, like, who knows, right? Like, maybe you and I spend an hour talking about our favorite Excel formulas and shortcuts.
That's my wife's
or
conversation. Yes. I'll be out.
I do like I'm out. You just cut the call off. You're like, Scott.
Dude, Excel is like a foreign language to me. I hate saying that, but it is. But I get it. It's just not my bag.
You're going to be like, come back when you want to talk about PowerPoint. That's my real desire and straight.
Let's talk Skype. Let's talk Skype.
Dude, yeah, this is old school. I feel like
we
might as well be on MySpace right now. This is crazy.
Essentially. Dude, what are you up to? Tell me what's going on in your world. What's new in your life?
I think what everybody wants to hear is, I'm doing like 12 different music projects, and I've been playing shows, but none of that's true. I'm a working guy, and I'm a manager of a technical team for cloud, for some cloud platform, which is half the people are like, whoa, that's crazy that he does that. The other half are like, let me fast forward. So I won't get into that too much, but that's what I do. I just moved into a new house, which is really awesome.
Exciting.
So here's a crazy thing, and I won't go into it too long. But my wife and I, we had been renting, right? My youngest son was going to move out of the house. We didn't really know what we were going to need after that. So we had been renting for a few years to figure out. Also, we're in Seattle, right? The market is
astronomical,
stupid.
Yeah.
Like, some people in parts of the country would be like, "Dude, you don't even know how bad it is," and other people could be like, "I don't know how you live there." But
yeah.
You go on Zillow or whatever your site of choice is, and you're looking at houses, and you find one. And you're like, it's $870,000.
Oh my God.
And you go, well, it needs a few things, but it looks like a pretty good place. And then you step back and you're like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
When you were a kid and you were watching Richie Rich or whatever, and he's in this mansion, and he's got Irona the maid, and he's got Cadbury the butler, and you're like a vault full of money that they just dive into like Scrooge McDuck. You're like, that must be $1 million house. And now the $1 million house is the one down the street that needs a bit of work and could use a fresh coat of paint.
Yep, you're right.
And hopefully, you can remodel it later on to make it the house of your dreams. But it's only $870,000. So what do you expect?
Yeah,
that's what life is over here. But we weren't looking. We found a place. Sent it to my wife. She's like, "I love that place. We have to get it." I'm like, "Well, let's dream on, right?" Like Steve and Tyler. And we went away for a few days, came back, and it was still available because they had taken it off the market for something wrong with the listing and put it back. Really cool house. Anyhow, I don't want to belabor the story, but ended up talking to my finance mortgage loan person over a 12-hour period. From starting that conversation about 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night, we ended up starting the loan stuff. Do you have the money? What limbs do you not need so you can afford this, right? And then being like, I have 2 arms for a reason, and so I have a spare. So you start trimming limbs, gathering money. We went and saw the place, talking to their realtor, blah, blah, blah. By 9 p.m. that night, we had our offer accepted.
Unbelievable. That's incredible.
And we love this place. Now, here's the crazy thing about it. When we were talking with their realtor, he said, "Hey, by the way, the couple that owns the house that you're buying from, he's a musician." And we're like, "Yeah, everybody's a musician, right?" He's a musician. And our realtor's like, "But what did he do?" And he goes, "Well, he played guitar in a band called Iron Butterfly."
Oh, wow. I remember that band.
And the realtor lady kind of looks at us and she kind of shrugs like, "Who the hell is Iron Butterfly?" Pardon me, everybody in internet land, I just said hell. Who is Iron Butterfly? And I'm like, "Are you guys serious?" I'm like, and they're like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Iron Butterfly. I'm like, "Yeah, what? Top 10 most classic rock songs ever, maybe?"
Probably. Yeah, could be.
Probably. Anyhow, he wasn't an original member, but he was a guitarist for the band for 10 years and did a bunch of music stuff here.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so the name of our house is Iron Butterfly.
That's sweet.
Which is cool. Anyhow, I know everybody wanted to hear about my house, so let's go on a tour and talk about the floorboards, shall we?
Why not?
So working, new house, and got my 50th birthday coming up.
That's exciting.
in about 2 weeks. So we're going to take a little vacation
Yeah.
and celebrate.
Well, happy early birthday. That sounds amazing.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Dude, 50.
I know.
Like, I know you're like early 30s, Jeremy.
I wish.
So like
Probably
in
a little
18
higher.
years or something, a little higher, 34.
I'm 4 years behind you. I am 4 years behind you.
All right. Well, you're getting there. And how do you feel about it? How do you feel about the 5-0?
You know, actually, I'm kind of looking forward to it only because my 40th was pretty dope. And now that I have the podcast, I'm hoping everyone that I've ever had on the podcast will show up to my birthday party, and then it'll be amazing.
Oh, dude, you're going to have like a We Are the World sort of gathering for your 50th. Yeah. I'm gonna have one headphone off my ear, and I'm gonna be looking kind of confused, like Bob Dylan was in that video.
Dude, that oh my God, that's incredible. That's such a good sight. Everyone's just kind of like awkwardly staring around, like, what the hell are we doing here?
What are we doing? And then some people are like way too into it. They're just.
I love that. That's incredible.
You're like they're so happy to be here. Why are they so excited? And Bob Dylan's like, where am I?
I know. That Netflix series is hysterical. I love it. It's so ridiculous. God, I love that. Well, anyway, that's a boy can dream that. Let's just say that. That's
we have 4 years to plan it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like Hollywood Bowl probably in LA.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, I would go in debt the rest of all of our lives combined, but yes, that would be cool.
Well, that would be worth it. I mean, can't take it with you, right? Or so they say.
It's so true. I mean,
which is really going to surprise all my family when I do take it with me, because I'm going to be buried with nickels. And I want them to cash in whatever I have left, convert it to nickels, and just weigh that sucker down.
That's amazing.
And, yeah.
That's amazing.
That last part was not true.
So I want to talk about when you and I first met via the internet, the lovely internet. It was a while ago.
I think it was called the World Wide Web back then.
World Wide Web.
Sure.
And I don't even know. I think I just added you on Instagram or MySpace, or I don't even know what. I really don't remember. But
okay. So first of all, when I think of you, I can't not think of that event, if you want to call it that, whatever it was. I just can't not. It was such a unique experience. My memory isn't always great, right? I mean, if it's 80s lyrics or a stupid sitcom for kids, I can remember, but everything else was a bit of a blur. Strangely, not drug related or alcohol. Like, I can't even blame anything cool like that. It's just dumbness. I want to say that there was some sort of like Poraloo forum,
maybe,
that was going on. Yeah, like a Yahoo group sort of thing like that, because that's what was cool back then. Maybe it's still cool. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is Yahoo even a company anymore?
I think so, because half the people I work with have Yahoo email addresses. But anyway,
that's nuts, man.
I digress.
So I want to say that there was some conversation going on in this forum or whatever, and chat room or something. That just sounds dirty now. Like, you can't say chat room and not sound a little creepy. Yeah, I was just hitting up my fans in the chat room. No, nothing like that.
Scott here in the chat.
Yes, Scott has entered the chat. First thing, I'm like, Jeremy, what are you wearing? So, hey, Jeremy, don't make it gross. All right, so we're having like people are like, oh hey, blah blah blah, and I think you were like, and maybe you were with somebody, but you're like, dude, this isn't really Scott. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And you're like, no, it's not. And you're like, prove it. Like, what's your cell number or whatever? And
oh my God,
I'm like,
I completely forgot about that.
And I'm like, sure, why not? And so I put in my cell number, and within like 3 minutes, I get a phone call, and I'm like, hello? And I think you can probably just tell from my voice. You're like, oh my gosh, it is you. At that point, I mean, I was just like cracking up. It was so funny.
So ridiculous.
And we just, we chatted for a bit. Who knows, right? I mean, what year was this? Was it like 99? Maybe?
No. It had to, well, I don't know.
It was before Waiting Room. It was before Waiting Room for sure.
Wow. That is insane. That's literally
so
insane.
I want to say it was like 25 years ago. But anyhow, so that's how we met, right? I mean, like, we went from two creepy guys on a chat room to two creepy guys on a cell phone.
On Skype.
And
now it's two creepy guys on Skype.
I mean, sometimes that's how life goes.
It's so stupid. It's so dumb. And you know what?
Anyhow.
You were so kind, by the way, to send me. I remember when we were talking, I remember you were like, hey, send me your address. And you sent me like the whole Poor New catalog on CD and then like a bunch of stickers.
Did I?
And yes. I'm like, what world am I living in? Like, this is insane. Like, growing up as a fan, it's like, I can't believe this just happened. Like, number one, meeting you, and then you sending me like the whole discography. It was nuts. I'll never forget that. It was incredible. Thank you.
I intended to send an invoice with that, but apparently I forgot. So we'll just consider it.
There was no vinyl on it, just so you know. That's why.
It was.
I got you on there.
I guess it was a nice gesture, I guess. You were probably in Kansas City at the time, right?
I was in Wichita. Yeah.
Yeah, Wichita.
Yeah.
Wichita.
Weren't you going out there for a little bit for work? Weren't you in KC? I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
Yeah, the strangely enough, I kind of still work for that company, but I left and came back.
Yeah.
But that part of the company was in like Overland Park, Lenexa area,
area.
Blah, blah, blah.
It's a great area.
And I was going out there. Actually, actually had a really fun time out there. There's some really cool areas. Around Kansas City. Yeah. Westport actually was one of my favorite places. Westport was great.
Yeah, the plaza and all that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would go up there. It was always a nice getaway when I lived in Wichita to go to KC for a couple of days. I had a good time out there.
Yeah,
good food.
And I do remember the plaza. Of all things, I went to Buca de Beppo out at the plaza, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Anyhow. Shout out to all the KC peeps out there.
Yeah. Whoever's listening to KC.
That's right. Call in now. The lines are open. We want to hear from you.
We got Scott here in the chat room.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's talk growing up for you, Scott. Let's talk about records, bands, influences, maybe even shows that kind of pushed you in the direction that you've went.
Yeah, so it's kind of timely and not intentional actually, but we just did this Straight Six on vinyl Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we did is we were doing as a stretch goal. There's a whole other conversation there because the stretch goals didn't go as planned, although we had good intentions. But one of them was to take a couple of songs that were very meaningful to us and to record those and put them on a 7-inch single, right? And that was going to be a stretch goal, is do a couple of really cool cover songs. We didn't hit any of the stretch goals. We met the main goal, which was the main intention, obviously, was to get Straight Six out on vinyl, which will be coming out in a few months. And I went back to the band guys, and I'm like, you guys, we didn't hit the stretch goals, and it would cost a lot. It would end up coming out of our pockets to do the 7-inch. I mean, it's expensive, right? To press press vinyl, ship it from the Czech Republic, get it here, package it, ship it, blah, blah, blah. I said, but why don't we still record the songs and we'll just put them on the vinyl? And they were like, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. And so we just like a week ago or something told people, hey, that's what we're doing. So the two songs that we're doing, which are very indicative of my young music kind of heart and soul.
Sure.
We're doing The Cure, A Forest.
Great song. Great band.
Awesome song. Arguably, it's hard to say it's their best.
It's great.
Because from a technical standpoint, they have so much stuff that's better, and they matured, and they on and on. But there is something about A Forest that is so quintessential.
Absolutely.
Of that time, of that band, of that era. And then the other one is Tears for Fears, The Hurting.
Oh, such a good band as well. Great song.
Growing up, I mean, I had like 3 bands that I would consider my favorite bands. It was The Cure, it was Tears for Fears, and then Echo and the Bunnymen.
Great bands.
But really, I could attribute almost all of that earliest musical kind of preference to my older brothers.
Yeah.
Who, we moved from Alaska. We moved down to Vashon Island, which of course is where I met the rest of the band guys. And but my brothers were older, so they were in high school when we moved down. And all of a sudden, they're in with kind of like this Vashon high school 80s crowd that's very alternative and, waver and new wave and this kind of stuff. And so my brothers are listening to The Cure. They're listening to the Smiths. They're listening to Depeche Mode. They're listening to Prefab Sprout. They're listening to the English Beat. They're all this, right, just very quintessential kind of waver music of the era. And of course, I was right next to them listening to it. And I just grabbed the ones that I liked. So one of the very first albums that I really remember listening to as like, I love this album for me, and I want to own this album and go up to the record store and grab the cassette and all this stuff, was The Cure, Head on the Door, which remains a top 10 favorite album of mine to this day. I don't know that I think there's a better Cure album for my taste. I think that album is perfect from beginning to end, and I don't say that for many albums.
Yeah.
And that album's just amazing. But another album that I picked up on early on was The Hurting by Tears for Fears, and I don't know if there is a better freshman album.
Yeah. I believe it.
I mean, The Cure's early stuff wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best way. I mean, like from beginning to end, a lot of those albums, you're kind of like, I'm going to skip that one. They were finding their feet.
Yeah.
Tears for Fears hit it out of the park on the first album.
Yeah.
Echo and the Bunnymen with Crocodiles, they hit it out of the park on their first album.
Yeah.
Not many bands can really say that, but that was the stuff that influenced me. And so when you start connecting with other kids your age, if music is a part of your life, and if music is a part of their life, and when I say part of your life, I'm not just talking about, I like to listen to the radio, but it's like, they feel invested in bands, right?
Sure.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
And when you start meeting those people and you start to realize that the stuff you guys listen to overlaps, it crosses, right? It merges. We start to build friendships on kind of a different level.
Sure.
And that's how a lot of my early meaningful relationships really started, is because this stuff meant a lot to me. And then I find somebody, it means a lot to them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, rightly or wrongly, you start to feel like, oh, this person's a real kindred spirit.
Yeah.
And right, you become friends. You have a common ground that you're both on, or many of you are on. So that was my early kind of musical experience. I remember, so on Vashon, we lived in this really cool house. So this house, we moved down from Alaska. We bought this house on Vashon. This house was 3,200 square feet, right? Which is ginormous.
Huge. Yeah, it's massive.
I know. As a kid, I didn't really grasp these things, right? 3,200 square feet. There were 4 fireplaces. We had beachfront property on Vashon, which it's not a Florida beach, right? But it's
sure.
But it's
a beach.
Waterfront.
It's a beach.
A long driveway, all this kind of stuff. My parents ended up selling the house for $180,000.
Oh my God!
Right. That was life back then,
Yes.
right? And it kills me now. My neighbor was John Ratzenberger. Cliff Clavin from Cheers was one of my neighbors. I know, it was pretty crazy. Just this really, really cool place. But we had this long driveway, and I would, this was 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And I would have to walk from the house down this long, completely unlit, forested driveway out to the main road, and then walk down the street to the bus stop. And I remember singing songs to myself going down the driveway. And I remember mostly, for whatever reason, the ones in my head are like A Baby Screams by The Cure from The Head on the Door.
Yeah.
Singing Mad World, by Tears for Fears, or Pale Shelter, right, that kind of stuff. But those were the songs, here I am like 10 or 11 years old, and those are the songs I'm singing to myself walking to the bus stop. That's one of the reasons why they're so near and dear to my heart. So anyhow, fast forward 78 years to now, and to be able to like go in and like record these songs and kind of make a version of them that is our own is really exciting. Yeah,
I love that, man. I love hearing that. So when you discovered all this music at such a young age, did you feel like you wanted to sing? Did you feel like you wanted to be in a band? Is that kind of what led to Tears of a King?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I stumbled into it more out of opportunity than necessarily a desire that I was going to push no matter what. So I was living on Vashon in moved right before 5th grade. At the beginning of 6th grade, Aaron Sprinkle and his family moved back on the island, and we became instant friends. And within that first, year together, Aaron was already doing music stuff. He, it was a lot of keyboard stuff back then. You could get sampling keyboards, so you could record a crazy sound, and then, he would write little things. And when he would write little things, I would like sing to him. So I think the earliest stuff that we did, aside from maybe like he's like, oh hey, I know how to play Lady Madonna on the keyboard, and we'd sing it together or whatever. He wrote some like with like this cheesy drum machine and a keyboard part. It was kind of like this twangy thing, and so we had this little parody thing. I think we did 2 songs total called the Shoehorns, and it was like this country western parody. And dude, the Shoehorns. So our world tour is coming up.
Poor old Shoehorns.
Poor old Shoehorns, yeah. And I think we're exclusively touring Norway. We're just really big there.
That could be very financially beneficial, for sure.
Kind of like Hasselhoff in Germany, right? Like nobody understands it, but he's big there.
Yeah, massive.
Also, Germany, lines are open. We do want to hear why you guys loved Hasselhoff so much. So we want to hear from you now. We actually recorded a couple of songs like on a reel-to-reel,
really?
And then we dump them down to cassette and given us some friends. And I remember like in 7th grade doing that or something. I wish those recordings, if I don't have them. I know for a fact I don't have them, but if one of our friends did, it'd be hilarious to hear those. Okay. I'm sure they're horrible. And then. But after that, we were writing kind of some of it wasn't just doing silly songs. It was like, let's do a serious song. And around that time, we were starting to get influenced by other artists, right? Some Christian artists like Altar Boys, Daniel Amos, other stuff in there, Randy Stonehill, Larry Norman. Maybe some Crumbacher sprinkled in there, although I wasn't. Some of that stuff, like the other guys, like probably heard more of when they lived in Southern California. But I was definitely into those earlier things I mentioned, Daniel Amos and Altar Boys and stuff.
Daniel Amos is great.
So we had some influences right from that. Like, okay, let's write a serious song, and we we would write some songs, but through like youth group and some other things, we met Nick, and I think it was like, hey Nick, we need somebody to play bass, and so he's like, okay, I'll learn bass, or I'll get a bass, that sort of thing. But he wasn't like a bass player, and we're like, dude, we need you. We're like, you're our buddy, so you need to learn an instrument. What do you think about bass, right?
I love that.
And who knew that he would have a penchant for it?
Yes.
In an amazing way. He's a great bass player, and it has been for as long as I've known him. And then Jeremy Enoch was really Nick's friend because they lived north of Seattle. We lived on Vashon. And then you end up, of course, with like the 4 of us, again, with musical common ground.
Sure.
And, you start to sprinkle in other stuff like U2, REM, obviously like the Cure and Tears for Fears and stuff like that, Depeche Mode. You start to get all these kind of influences in there, and this common ground of hey, I love this stuff. Let's do something that kind of sounds like that, and start writing music. And eventually you write a few songs and you're like, dude, we should be a band. And the thoughts don't really go much beyond that when you're like in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You're not, we should be a band and we're going to tour and we're going to get a record label deal. And we're like, we should be a band because it's cool to say that you're in a band.
Sure.
And if you can say, hey, we're in a band, here's our demo tape, and you've got, 3 songs on there or whatever, people are like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, people are reaching in their shirt, throwing their bras at you, right? I mean, men and women alike. They're just throwing them. And we're
so
like,
true.
we're in eighth grade.
It's so
we're
true.
in eighth grade. Knock it off.
We're in eighth
And then I'm like, I'll see you
in
in
eighth grade.
I'll see you in the chat room in like 20 years.
It's so crazy.
I don't know. What's wrong with us?
Who's to say?
So that's how Tears of the King came about, right? And we did like a few songs. Well, no, we did 6 songs
Recorded,
yeah.
Where are they?
Yeah, and
are they out there? I have never heard them.
they are not out there for public consumption, but they are in fact out there. And you and I are going to have to take this offline before I let you hear that stuff.
Okay, I can do that.
But we recorded 6 songs. Jeremy was singing. We had like 2 lead singers because we were the Beatles. Jeremy was singing 4 of them. I sang lead on 2 of them. And for like 8th graders, like it's cheesy listening to it now, but for 8th graders, it was pretty dang good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. We were using a drum machine and obviously some keyboards, but we had guitar and bass that we were actually recording and kind of doing this. You've got a reel to reel. We didn't have an 8-track or a 16-track. It's like record the guitar and drums and set the levels and dump them down to a track and then add some vocals and set a level. And we're having to do all that kind of stuff. And then in 9th grade, we took like 3 of those songs. We're like, let's re-record them even better. And so we did that. We played 1 show on Vashon, like one show total is Tears of a King. And it was on the porch of the house where Aaron and Jesse's family lived. I don't know. I mean, it was definitely like stadium style seating, so there was probably like 70,000 people in attendance.
I wouldn't be surprised.
We made a lot off. It was, it was a lot like Coldplay now, right? Similar crowd sizes, merch sales. It was all. It was all that.
Okay,
It was very, very similar. We have a lawsuit pending with Coldplay because their career has mimicked ours in so many ways.
It's obvious.
Yeah, including marrying Gwyneth Paltrow because I was her first love, but she left me for Chris. So, but we, Jeremy wasn't necessarily as local. 2 lead singers, both Aaron and Jeremy were kind of like the alphas of the band as far as like creative control, whatever. There wasn't ever a falling out. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, we're in like 9th grade. It was just one of those things where like, hey, we're gonna be a band, just Aaron, Nick, and I, and it was called Bell Bang Villa. And it was the 3 of us and a drum machine. And we ended up recording like a 9-song album when we were sophomores. And like in a studio in that whole thing.
Sure.
And we played a show in front of the youth group. We went to Germany right after that show.
World tour immediately.
His world tour is like Seattle.
World tour next year.
Seattle, Germany, we're coming your way. We were opening up for Hasselhoff. No, that's not true. But how awesome would that have been?
That would have ruled.
Or how awesome if we had a cross promotion where We opened for him, and then he brought us on to Baywatch. And 3 skinny white kids are running on the beach.
Dude.
Like maybe we pretend to drown.
And you have all your songs on the soundtrack? There you go.
The entire show features our songs. And then when you go on IMDb later, you go, this is the lowest rated episode ever. The episode's okay, but the music is the worst. That's absolutely skip. Yeah, and move on to the next one where Don Knotts is the love interest. I would watch that episode. We went to Germany and played some more shows, on and on and on. And then when we got back, it was like, let's get a drummer. And Jesse was like in the background, a drum kit in the house where we're always doing stuff. And he's 3 years old and he's playing drums. And I think every time we talk about Jesse's age, it just gets younger. So he's back there playing drums, and we're like,
this kid's good.
Jesse's really good, like probably better than all the rest of us. So let's, bring him on. And so our very first shows with Jesse we're still Melbourne Villa. But then I don't know, like the summer between 10th and 11th grade, I think, is when we changed our name to Poor Old Blue. And then we, with Jesse, went back into the same studio, recorded what is called our 3-song demo. The next year, we went into, we did our own thing and recorded Star Studded.
Yeah.
By ourselves, and then went and like mixed it in that same studio because it was available and just kind of down the hall. But of course, at that point we were a 4-piece band. So, I mean, what a weird progression of things, but it was pretty cool to be like a sophomore in high school and be like, oh yeah,
totally.
Here's this album we did, and
totally. Did you feel like you had something special? I mean, did you feel like the songs at that time? Did you feel like, hey, we've got something? I mean, I know, at a young age, did you just feel like you had something that, was different? I guess.
I think, obviously, I can't speak for the rest of the guys, but I think, as it progressed, the more special it felt. You listen to the album that we recorded in when we were sophomores, that 9-song Belbang Villa album, and it feels pretty silly. And there's a lot of silly stuff. You're like, well, yeah, these guys were like 14 years old. But then you get to like the 3-song demo, and we had a song called This Theater, which was all of a sudden a bit more dark and a bit more meaningful. It felt mature compared to the other stuff. And then you get to Star Studded, and there's complexity to it, and we're just starting to mature. We're starting to write stuff that is more meaningful to us and is maybe a little bit less embarrassing to hand out to people.
Sure.
I think at that point we thought it was pretty special. I don't think we had any feelings like we were necessarily incredible.
Sure.
But I think we felt like we had something that people could listen to, and we wanted to get better. We wanted to record more. We wanted to record in a nicer space and have more professional sounding stuff, and wanted to work with people and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously you put this demo out, the Star Studded. When does Alarma come along? And maybe talk me through signing with Alarma. Obviously, was that the only label interested? Just kind of talk me through that.
Yeah, it really didn't take too much longer for Alarma to come along. We put out, we recorded Star Studded in like the spring of 1992, I think. Because I think we recorded it over spring break, actually. And I think by the summer of 93, we had signed with Alarma. So it was about a year out of high school. I know there are people listening to this that are going to be like, I've heard this story before, but it's probably worth sharing quickly that we were thinking about record labels, and we were judgy, right? I mean, we were looking at the music that we liked and the bands that we liked, and hey, what labels are they on? Because I want to be on a cool label, right? Which is half the reason that Tooth and Nail had the success that it has, right? Is that
sure,
Tooth and Nail became a cool label.
Yeah.
And it ended up with its own gravitational pull. Well, Tooth and Nail didn't exist back then. So
yeah,
we're seeing record labels like Forefront, and we're like, that label's cheesy. And you're seeing labels like Maranatha, and you're like, it's all just gospel band.
Yeah.
And you kind of go down the list, and then you're like, well, here's some indie labels, like maybe Blonde Vinyl or something. And you're like, that's cool, but they're an indie label. They're not really going to have money to kind of really promote and support. I mean, you wanted something that would have some legs.
Sure.
Well, some of the bands that we loved at that time, I mean, Scattered Few was a huge one.
Yeah.
They were on Alarma, right? Daniel Amos was on. I mean, Alarma was comes from Daniel Amos series of albums. Swirling Eddies, of course, were on Alarma. There didn't end up being, a gazillion bands on Alarma, but some of the ones that we liked the best were Alarma, and so we were definitely interested in them. Well, Randy Stonehill was kind of a family friend of the Sprinkles from when they lived in California, and he would come into Seattle and he would play some shows at the church. And but anyhow, Aaron and Jesse's dad took our Star-Studded album and they gave it to Randy and just said, hey, listen to this and let me know what you think. Nothing else was expected or promised or anything, right? Randy listened to it. He liked it, or at least he thought, this is impressive. These guys are, 17 years old or whatever when they did this. And so he did what he thought was the most logical thing, which is give the cassette to Terry Taylor.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Which, he was like a complete, huge influence on us, right?
That.
From Daniel Amos and a bunch of other bands that he had produced, right? Because he had produced, at the time, he had produced Scattered Few. I think he had produced Dig Jesus and some other bands of that era. Terry got it. He was like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to take it to Frontline / Alarma. I mean, Alarma was, I don't know if everybody knows this, Alarma was just kind of like their alternative part of the label. That's all it was. It wasn't, it wasn't a different company.
Yeah.
Frontline had, their mainstream artists were Frontline. Their alternative stuff was Alarma.
Sure.
Their heavier stuff was Intense.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what their hip hop stuff was. Maybe there was something else. I don't know. But anyhow, Terry took it to the label, and he's like, I think you guys ought to sign this band, and I think that I should produce the album. Which, then the label reaches out to us and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? We're, of course, ecstatic, right? I mean, we're just like, oh my gosh, one of the labels that we actually wanted to be on with a guy that we would love to record with. I mean, it's a dream come true,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And then they go, well, we want to come up and see you play. They're like, we kind of want you to prove yourself a little bit, or I guess, I don't know. So we went back to Aaron's parents' house and got on that porch. No, we set up a quick show, like in the middle of the day. It was just the worst, conditions ever. It was just, hey, everybody, we need to, get in here for a show. But it was a guy from the label named Michael Black, who was, I think, a VP of the label at the time. And he brought up one of his newish employees, Brandon Ebel.
Nice.
And they said, hey, we want to watch you guys play. And so we're like, okay. And we put the show together, and, a number of friends showed up to help support us, and we played a show. And then we got to hang out with them and talk and that kind of stuff. Anyhow, whatever the time frame was, a few weeks later, a month later, whatever, we got a record contract, and we signed it and promptly told my parents, hey, I'm going to drop out of college and do this band thing, with the promises of hundreds of dollars.
Sure.
Which pretty sweet. Yeah. And that's how that started,
Yeah.
And I think our understanding, or our kind of the blinders or the rose-colored glasses that we had on
Sure.
prior to that about a record label, about the Christian industry, all those things, they came off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Terry Taylor wasn't trying to ruin us. I think he, again, we were young. I mean, I remember recording Mind Size, and I was just such an annoying twerp half the time. Part of it because I'm an annoying twerp, and part of it because I was like 17, 18.
Sure.
Or I think I turned 19 while we were recording that is what happened. But Terry saw that we maybe were a little bit different, and we wanted to know more things, and we wanted to joke about more things, and we wanted to not just say, hey man, whatever you want to do, it's totally cool, just do it. He would make suggestions about songs, and we'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. But sometimes he would say, I think you guys should do, you should double this chorus here, and then you could do a refrain and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, no, I don't think we're really feeling that. And his response every time would be like, all right, well, there goes another 10,000 album sales then.
That's incredible.
His response was basically like, sure, don't listen to me, but there goes a bunch of sales. And he was, he was always joking about it, but a lot of the stuff on Mind Size really was from suggestions that he made. You can hear differences from our demos of the songs, or the ones that carried over from Star Studded, where he listened to them and he'd be like, listen, the intro doesn't need to be this long, or this bridge kind of drops out. What if you had even like some just background vocals over the top, or whatever it might be. He was producing. Yeah. He was trying to figure out, it's like you kind of cut the fat, if you will.
Sure.
And you want to make the song move along, right? And be catchy and be special and all this kind of stuff. I mean, we really learned a lot from working with Terry during that time recording Mind Size.
Yeah. Did he like the record? Was he stoked on it?
That's funny. Nobody's ever asked. I assume he did.
I know you can't speak for him, but I'm sure he had to be.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's in like his regular rotation anymore.
It might be. You never know.
It might be. He might be listening. You know what? He could be listening to it right now.
Could be right now.
Yeah. Let me go. Just 1 second. I'm going to log on to my royalty meter and see if it's currently going up because he's spinning the album. Oh yeah, here it is. T. Taylor at yahoo.com is logged in, currently spinning Mind Size. Yep, he's in there.
Right. He's paying himself.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. I can't wait for those 2 cents to come through in 6 months. So we learned a lot. We learned a lot on Mind Size, but we've said this before, and I know even when we did the Kickstarter campaign for the vinyl, we had a book that went with it that talked about the album, and it had the the lyrics for the songs and the lyric sheets and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things that we've always talked about with Mind Size was it was mostly songs that we had already made, right? Songs that we had already written, recorded, done some sort of demo of, or in the case of Star Studded, we had it like on a previous album. So Mind Size wasn't a revelation for us. And in some ways, when we were recording Mind Size, it was like us finishing a painting that we had already been working on for the previous year or a couple of years, right? Yeah. You're like, listen, these are the best songs that we have so far. They're strong tracks. Let's get a better recording of them, make it professional, and let's stamp this and put it out there.
Yeah.
But by the time you finish a first album, I think for a lot of bands, you're really already thinking about the next album because you're like,
yeah,
I'm gonna do a brain dump, get this out of here. Okay, that album is done. Now I'm moving on, and you can see this like with bands like The Cure, like they'll have a first album. So they have Three Imaginary Boys, right? And then Boys Don't Cry is technically their second album.
Yeah.
But there are songs that carried over between them that are on both.
Yeah.
And it's like Three Imaginary Boys. I mean, it was on a record label, but it was almost like them dumping stuff down, and then they took the best of those ones and made Boys Don't Cry, which is definitely a more cohesive album.
Sure.
Between the two. But then, so when you start talking about The Cure, you look at Boys Don't Cry, you see what's on there, some amazing songs. But when you look at A Forest, when you look at 17 Seconds, when you look at their next album, it's such a major shift.
Absolutely.
Because those first albums were a brain dump. It was get this stuff down. Hey, it's our greatest hits so far.
Yeah.
But they were shifting already. In 17 Seconds is a dramatic, probably as dramatic as a shift as they've had between any two albums.
Sure.
Except for maybe Pornography to Japanese Whispers, which people are like, what the bleepity-bleep happened?
Yeah.
But I don't think Mind Size to Sin was necessarily that same kind of dramatic shift. But I think you can listen to those albums and you can see that we were changing.
Sure.
Our sound was changing. The way we wanted to record was changing. And Sin had a very different personality from Mind Size. Yeah.
Let me ask you real quick, briefly, on the end, before we go into Sin. How do you feel about Mind Size? I know you kind of said it was kind of a polished off version of the demos, essentially, but looking back on it, how do you feel about it?
It's definitely the one that I listen to the least. I don't know how I don't know how other artists are, right? If other artists listen to a lot of their music or not. I don't listen to our stuff frequently, but I definitely go through phases.
Sure.
But Mind Size is the one that I listen to the least. I don't necessarily enjoy the recording quality of it. There are kind of some audio things about it that I don't like the way the drums were necessarily recorded, or some things like that. Sin definitely gets way more toward the vibe that we wanted to have.
Sure.
Mind Size feels polished. It feels a little thin. It feels a little bit slick. And again, I don't want to speak for the band, but I think I'm correct in saying that most of the guys, if not all the guys in the band, kind of felt the same way. When we got Mind Size, we were like, okay, it's cool, it's awesome. Hey, I recorded an album on a label. Here it is. It's on a CD.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff that's really exciting. But I don't think we really felt like it captured us
Sure.
the way that we would have wanted. So I'm not ashamed of it by any stretch.
It's not your favorite.
But it's not my favorite. I do think there are some songs on there that are awesome, but it represents kind of, I think, our youthful side because it was a couple of years in the making, so to speak. And so because of that,
Yeah.
it's not as much fun for me to listen to.
I get that.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Sin. Obviously a departure. Like you said, from, you had all these. You guys were changing essentially. So let's talk about the Sin record. Just kind of thoughts of that. It sounds like it was more up your alley, but as a band, and you're obviously going in different directions in terms of the recording and whatnot. So yeah, bring me through the Sin record and kind of your thoughts on that time.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, where did you enter the picture? Did you hear us on Mind Size?
Oh yeah, I heard Mind Size in the beginning for sure.
Okay. So you had heard that album and then Sin came. Okay.
Yeah. And I loved them both, by the way.
Thank you. You were one of our early and deep fans, right?
Yeah.
One of our strong fans. Mind Size came out, and then you get an album out. Record label wants you to do some touring and do some shows, and so we did all that stuff. But I know we were all pretty antsy to get back in and start writing some more songs. There are the rare bands, I think, that love certain parts of the process, right? Maybe they just love writing songs. Maybe they love recording, that whole part of it. Maybe they love touring in live shows and being out there with people, all these kinds of things. I don't know that we were ever as excited about the other two items. I think we loved the recording process.
Sure.
And that's not to say that recording an album is some level of fun, because honestly, it's pretty boring.
Yeah.
If for those listening, if you've ever been in a studio,
It is boring.
It's boring. You're hearing the same thing over and over, and then they're like, "Oh, let me try that again. Let me try that again. Let me try that." And it's just sometimes you're like, I want to pull my hair out, right? But when you get to the point where you start to see it take shape,
Yeah.
and you might be working on vocal tracks one day, or you're working on a guitar part, or getting the drums or bass down or overdubs or whatever you're doing. And you might come in the next day and somebody's like, here, let me, toss together a quick mix and all of a sudden you listen back and you're like, whoa, this is sounding great. And you get to, for I guess, lack of a better way to explain it, you're starting to kind of see something give birth, a song kind of give birth, or you're giving birth to a song, rather.
Sure.
And it's exciting to see that. And I really did love that part. I probably loved the overdubs through the mixing the most, because that's when you're really starting to see things take shape. And that's when you can go and you'd be like, it sounds great, but it's missing something here. Let's put something there, right? You're starting to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
So the reason I was saying all that is, after we were supporting Mind Size and doing some shows and stuff like that, we were already really thinking about the next thing. And we kind of had a concept for the album in the idea of sin, at least as far as artwork and some other, thematic things going on.
Sure.
But even not long after Mind Size, we were already thinking, we want to record this differently. We want to have it less produced. We want to do it on our own terms. And we want to have a lot more say in every stage of the process. And so when we started thinking about sin, we were looking local. And in fact, we ended up working with a guy that we just knew through some small kind of indie circles. I mean, his name is John Goodmanson. He's still producing and engineering and stuff. Worked on a lot of really cool stuff. But we weren't looking for like a big name producer or even somebody in like the Christian industry. This guy had nothing to do with the Christian industry. He didn't know who we were. But we had heard some stuff that he had done, and he was closely associated with a studio that we had tracked in for Mind Size for like drums and bass and stuff. And we wanted to go back there and do more of the album. And so we're like, this guy has the vibe that we want. He can like co-produce it with us. So, Mind Size was produced by Terry Taylor, whereas Sin was produced by John Goodmanson and Paul Road Lou, right? Yeah. We were there helping to produce the album. And so, we had, I don't know how many songs of Sin kind of written beforehand, but we went in there and started laying down songs. I think we were tracking probably for a couple of weeks, laying down the songs that we already had, and then finishing some stuff in the studio. Or in the case of a song like Chance for the Chancers, sure, or Sickly, like we wrote those in the studio.
Wow.
I mean, Sickly was written over the course of like an hour.
It's crazy.
Which is really cool, right? And you can just like go into the main recording space, you turn the lights down, it's a one big loud room, and people are just kind of jamming on their stuff, and maybe you have headphones on so you can actually hear yourself sing, and you just get to kind of jam and vibe on stuff, which I think that's cool. Probably how a lot of our best stuff came about, right? Was just getting a vibe and going through it together and coming up with something. But we tracked there, and then we wanted to mix in a kind of an iconic studio, which we had to talk the label into because it was going to be more expensive. But we wanted to mix at a studio called Bad Animals, in downtown Seattle, which of course was owned by the band Heart. And they had three main studios there: Studio A, B, and X. X being like their top tier, whatever. So while we're mixing and doing a few overdubs at Mad Animal Studio B, The Innocence Mission is recording an album over in Studio A, which was really cool.
Great band.
And Queensryche was recording in Studio X. Whatever album of theirs that was released in 1995, or I'm not really a Queensryche fan, but it was pretty funny to see them walking through the lobby and all that stuff when we were there. But the vibe of Sin really started to take shape. It was, well, for one, there was more vibe. It was definitely more cohesive from beginning to end, because those songs were written over this smaller period of time, and artists tend to kind of write in waves. If you write 10 songs in a month, those songs are probably going to sound a lot more alike than ones that you had written a year earlier.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so that's part of the reason the Sin has the vibe that it has, is because we really wrote over this smaller period of time. We specifically didn't want it to be slick. We wanted it to be fewer overdubs. We wanted a more analog sound.
Yeah.
We wanted less digital kind of stuff. We opted for kind of a fatter reel, that we're recording on at a slower inches per second.
Yeah.
Which would make the sound a little bit more crunchy, and making this thing our own. And we had a lot of input on that album, and for better or for worse, it shows. I mean, I go back and listen to that album now, and there's things that I would fix.
Sure.
But they were our mistakes, and we've shared this before, but probably my biggest regret of Sin was that when we were in the studio mixing, John had said, "Hey, this studio is known to be a little bit bassy, so I'm gonna mix the bass a little less." And and at the time we're like, yeah, okay. I mean, whatever you need to do, right? Like we wouldn't know what the studio is, known for or not. And so he mixed the bass, the bass and the low tones kind of down in the mix. And when we got the CD after the fact, we immediately noticed that it was a mistake. And I think if we would have had the power to say, we need to go back and redo this, we probably would have remixed it. I think it was kind of like, well, I guess it's good enough. I mean, it's not like the bass isn't there, but it wasn't.
It's not what you wanted.
It wasn't the chunky, Posies-esque.
Sure.
Very analog, crunchy low end, all this kind of stuff that we wanted. It unfortunately ended up missing some low end and having a little bit of a shrill to it that we weren't happy about. That was all kind of in the mix down. That wasn't in the recording. When we released this, more recently released this on vinyl, we were able to go back to the unmastered version of the album. So it was mixed, but nothing else had been done to it. Get it to Levi Seitz at Black Belt Mastering, who is a a genius,
Yeah.
and have it remastered and start to kind of fix some of those things. And he would,
Sure.
we told him some of our concerns, and he's like, okay. And he would go through and kind of listen song by song, and then he'd send them back and go, what do you think? And we'd go, maybe this. And you kind of get to go back and fix a few things, although you can only fix so much.
Sure.
For people that aren't, super familiar with the biz, when an album says remastered, you got to understand there's only so much they can do.
Absolutely.
When an album says it's remixed, they can do a lot. You're getting down to the individual tracks, and you can, aside from actually just re-recording stuff, which hopefully bands aren't doing that, but when you remix, you can go in there and you can completely change the album, but still have all the original recordings.
Sure.
Most of the time they don't do that, right? They're just trying to make the original content that much better. I don't know how many remixed albums you've heard, but like Sgt. Pepper's was remixed from the original tapes. Yeah. And it sounds amazing. Yeah. I mean, it is sonically as good as anything you're going to hear today.
Sure.
But, all the recordings are from the 66 and 67. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, overall, looking back on Sin, I know you kind of mentioned the bummer of the bass, but overall, how do you feel about the record?
I think we were all really happy with it. I think we, aside from the kind of the sonic issues that happened in the mixing, we felt like it captured us. We felt like it captured the band that we were in the mid 90s, and the songs that we wanted to play and the vibe that we wanted to have. And, it was definitely a bit more grungy.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We weren't necessarily going for grungy. I think we were a little bit too all over the map for us to ever have been considered a true grunge band, because we could hardly ever stick with one sound. But it had a lot of those overtones, and I think I can speak for the band that we were really happy with it, and held our heads pretty high.
Yeah,
on that one, and I think it was one that I think people are like, hey, Mindsize is cool, this band out of Seattle, but then I think Sin, that sophomore album that tends to really make or break a band. I think we did ourselves a real service.
Yeah.
With that album, because we owned it, we made it our own. We didn't just repeat the same formula and say, hey, let's lean on what we did before.
Yeah.
And I think it resonated with people. They were like, oh, wow, these guys are legit.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of bands, you'll hear their first album, they're cool, and you hear their second album, you're like, oh, this isn't great.
Totally. Absolutely.
And you kind of fall out of, being a fan of them at that point, because you're like, yeah, maybe they were kind of a one and done.
Yeah. No, I get that. Well, so Sin, obviously, did you feel like it did pretty well for you guys overall? I mean, I know I didn't ask on Mindsize, but I mean, would you feel like you had a buzz?
I feel like we did. I think most of our stuff was underselling in general. You'll hear about movies that are like a critic's choice sort of thing, right?
Sure.
But not necessarily the fan favorite. or like the public's favorite, maybe is a better way of saying it. And I feel like there was some of that was really true with us. I feel like we were more of a critical acclaim than being necessarily radio friendly.
Sure.
And destined to top the charts or play the big tent at Cornerstone or whatever kind of goals that people have in mind. And so, honestly, to this day, I don't even remember how many albums we sold. Like,
Billions.
I mean, obviously billions. What I mean is, was it 1 billion or was it 10 billion? Right, there's a big difference.
It's just money. It's just money.
Well, it's just money, and that's why I throw it around willy-nilly on houses, in chat rooms. I think we were happy with how they were doing.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever broke through on anything. I think we became kind of a fan favorite. I think we were regarded in some circles, and certainly the circles that we cared about the most.
Sure.
We were respected and regarded as maybe being like an artist's band.
Yeah.
Than, again, like being on the cover of a magazine or something like that.
Sure.
In retrospect, I'm fine with that, right? I mean, at the time, you can be a little bummed that you're like, oh man, I wish we had, sold 100,000 albums or something. But we were never going to be that band.
Sure. No, I get that. Well, let's talk about the Straight Six EP, which you guys obviously just put out on vinyl. Looks amazing, by the way. Bring me through the mindset of that, and maybe some thoughts on that, and obviously bringing Jeremy back to the fold for a song. It's a powerful EP.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites that you guys have done.
Yeah, Straight Six was funny. I think I said this in the Kickstarter campaign, which, as we were discussing earlier, it just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Straight Six was, again, we could never really stay in our lane for too long.
Yeah.
And so, there were probably people out there that let's just hear the extension of Sin and more of that. And we're like, but what if we go in by ourselves and record 6 songs that are all completely different from one another and totally different from anything we've ever done? What do you guys think about that? There are probably people like, you guys lost me, right? Or you guys are nuts. We actually recorded Straight Six because we were doing albums going all the way back to the earliest Poraloo days before we were signed. We were doing albums, recording them in the spring and releasing them in September or something like that. Or maybe flip-flopped. I don't remember what it was, but it was always the same time every year. We're like, this cycle is dumb.
Sure.
Let's put something out and disrupt the cycle. We had a contract, and so certain things we had to do, and we're like, we're gonna go and record an EP. We're gonna do it ourselves. We're gonna, just have our time in the studio to write and record and mix all by ourselves. On this album, and so we had access to a studio, and that's what we did, and it was way more laid back. We didn't have the time constraints. We could go in there and we could hang out, all day, all weekend, whatever we wanted to do. We just kind of had carte blanche to go in there and do what we wanted to do, and I don't remember going into Straight Six thinking, hey, here's a sound that we want to make. Sin, we had a vibe, we had a crunchiness and a growl and this kind of stuff that we wanted that album to have. But with Straight Six, we didn't have that. We just wanted to be creative. So because of it, you end up with an album that has 6 songs that are all very, very disparate, very different from one another. The first song of the album, I remember, I think I probably was like listening to Larry Norman a bit at the time, or maybe I had like just got his albums on CD, and so I was listening to them again, like In Another Land or something like that. Because that first song, Lie, 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 I really wanted kind of that 70s vibe to it.
Yeah, I can hear it for sure.
Yeah, there's hand clapping in it. There's this buzz of the microphone at the beginning of the song. It sounds a little bit like it's recorded with one microphone in the corner of a room, sort of deal.
It really does, now you say that.
Yeah, very unpolished, and that was intentional. But then for like the next song, like we had a different thing in mind. And for the next one, you get to like Digging Deep, which all of a sudden it's acoustic and it's breathy and kind of light as air and, this sort of thing. And it, at that point, Jeremy had been doing Sunny Day. And like I said, there was never a falling out with Jeremy. He started doing his thing. Clearly, he's been extremely successful, and has written some of my favorite albums of all time, honestly. But we were like, let me back up on something. If we had a theme on Straight Six, I think the theme was, let's do it different. Let's do it differently than we would have done before.
Sure.
So we did it ourselves, right? It was even less polished. It was, we're not going to have all this input from other people. We're going to really keep this, produced by Poor Old Lou, mixed by Poor Old Lou, all that kind of stuff. But, that first track, Lie, 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 like, that wasn't like anything we had done before.
Sure.
With Digging Deep, we're like, what if we did a duet? We've never done a duet before. Well, who could sing with us? And it's like, well, maybe Jeremy would want to sing, sort of thing.
So nuts.
And, of course, he came in and I was like, well, what lyrics do you have? And I was like, well, here's go, and what if you did this section? And here's what I'm singing, so what do you want to sing? And that sort of thing. For the Love of My Country is, again, very raw. It's not polished, but it's probably the closest to sounding like Sin, right, of the group. You've got Bittersweet in there, which I know a good friend of mine, he's like, that's my favorite Poor Lou song, which I think is kind of crazy. But in Slipknot, which is probably one of the more forgettable tracks of the album. But what it did for us was when Napster and LimeWire were popular and people were searching for Slipknot, they got
you guys.
This was completely unbeknownst to us. Like, I didn't even know what those things were at the time, but they ended up getting Slipknot and being like, oh, Slipknot has a song called Poor Old Lou. And they downloaded it and they went, what the beep was this? And it was by far our most downloaded track on like Napster and stuff.
That's
pretty funny. If I'd known, I would have named some of her other songs.
Metallica, Prince.
Metallica. Mm-hmm. Whitney Houston. Poor Lou, Whitney Houston, right?
Taylor Swift.
Maybe Celine Dion. Yeah, well, she was probably an amoeba at the time, but yeah, we would have gone whole hog
Dude,
Here's
absolutely.
poor Lou with Nirvana.
That's hysterical.
So we went in there again. Let's do it differently than we would have done before.
Yeah.
Which included doing a cover song, right?
Yeah.
And we did "Speak Soft" by the Swoon, which
Great song.
was definitely my pressure on the rest of the band. I was like, you guys, I really love this album. I especially love this song. What if we did this song as a cover? And it took some talking into, but again, not something we would have done in the past, and not something that people were expecting, right? And also to do a cover song that people hadn't even heard of most of the time,
Yeah.
was like, that's kind of bizarre, but okay. And then when you listen to the album, there's all these little in-between bits. There's, you're like Aaron playing like this flamenco thing and like, kind of like doing this yodel thing over the top, or you hear some band like orchestra thing.
Yeah.
That was all stuff that we recorded during that time. And we're like, we're going to have these things playing almost like they were playing, like they were recorded on the tape that we were using, and then you record your song over the top of it, and then when your song ends, here's the thing that was on the tape. Like, you remember that back in the in the cassette days where you're like, oh, this song is great, song ends, and then you're in the middle of a song you recorded off the radio.
Yeah.
It was that kind of vibe. It was actually totally ripped from an album that Robert Smith was involved with in the 80s called The Glove. Blue Sunshine was the name of the album. And they had that thing going on like underneath some tracks. And honestly, The Cure Pornography had some of that going on too. We thought it was a cool vibe. We're like, what if we take these little things and put them between songs so that the album starts and it goes to the end and there's never actually a lull in anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always something going on, almost like it's one long track.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Straight Six, and then, the end of Speak Soft has this very Beatles-esque,
Yes, it does.
big, like, kind of swell, and then, like on Sgt. Pepper's with A Day in the Life, where the Beatles had that. Then they go into what they called the eternal groove. It was just that sound that played over and over and over. But we definitely had that sort of thing on Speak Soft, which was intentional. Straight Six was definitely, I think, kind of a or make or break the fans sort of album.
Wow.
I think some fans were like, they lost me. Like, I just wanted more of Sin. I wanted this grunge band. And I don't know what the heck Straight Six is. And we had other people that I think probably were fans before we signed to a record label that maybe didn't resonate with Mind Size in and Sin, rather, because they thought maybe we had sold out. That heard Straight Six and went, oh, they're still in there. Yeah. They're still kind of weird. They're still doing their own thing. And so for some people, Straight Six was the first time that they actually really loved our stuff again. Or has been the album that has resonated with them the most because it was weird. It was challenging. It was more focused on creativity than anything else.
Sure.
I'm excited now that the vinyl is going to be coming out. I'm excited to hear, to start remastering these tracks and to hear what they sound like and to put things together and to be working on the artwork again and all this stuff, because there's no doubt that Straight Six is very near and dear to our hearts because it was this wacky, creative outpouring, labor of love sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, it was cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Well, I was going to ask you how you feel about it, but it sounds like I know how you feel about it. From what you just said. I will say, for me, I remember vividly buying it in a Christian bookstore in West Virginia. I was with my family, and okay, I got you.
Now keep talking.
Oh, sorry. So I went to West Virginia, and we went into a Christian bookstore, and I remember buying it because I was excited that you guys had put it out, and I loved the two records before, obviously, but I remember listening to it vividly and being like, "This is so different," and it actually made me like you guys even more. Like you kind of said, it was just kind of a departure, and of course, that's when I first discovered Jeremy Enoch, of course, and then the Swoon. So it was an eye-opening experience for me personally as a fan. And, to this day, it's one of my favorite records you guys have put out. I mean, I know, we have a select amount that you've put out, but it's like that one I listen to quite often, as well as some of the others. But yeah, it definitely, it's cool that you like start with this polished record and then you digress to a more rock record and then you digress even more.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear that perspective of it because usually it's the direct opposite, typically, you start with that, bare bones and then you move up, and it's just funny to hear your perspective on it because it's so different. But I think all three of the records we've discussed so far are fantastic in their own right, in their own way, And,
did you feel like, because I haven't, really talked to a lot of people about their initial impressions versus long-term impressions, and you're not going to hurt you could say that you hate Straight Six. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Like we're way beyond that. But do you remember maybe listening to Straight Six and maybe not getting it right away?
No, I got it right away. I got it right away.
Okay.
I absolutely did because number one, the songs were fantastic. I think that's, to me, that's the breaker for me if I connect with the songs. I connect with every single song on it. And again, I thought it, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is just more music from a band that I love anyway. And, like I said, I can't just have this viewpoint of vividly remember buying it in this bookstore. And I remember, I don't know why, but I remember that. And I think that's probably why I equate my love for it so much, other than the fact that I do love it. But it's like, it kind of was a game changer in an aspect for me because I had liked you guys, but I liked you even more after I heard Straight Six, to be honest with you. So you can write that one down.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again, I think we got to a point where maybe we were leaning into a little bit of, we're never going to be the popular band, but we might be kind of the artist's favorite or the music lover's favorite.
Sure.
And so, hey, if this is who we are, let's lean into it. And let's continue to put out the music that we want to put out, not worrying about, is it going to be a chart topper or, the most accessible to every single person sort of thing. So
totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Pictures of the Eighth Wonder. Great record. That's probably my favorite. We talked about that earlier. It's. I mean, I love them all. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm picking one over the others, but this is my favorite one. This is the one I connected to the most. Fantastic record. Just bring me through the recording of that and kind of some thoughts on it, and maybe how you feel about it now.
Picture of the Eighth Wonder is probably the album that I resonate with the most. Maybe I'll figure that out while we're talking about it, or maybe not. I don't know. What's funny is I mentioned Chance for the Chancers earlier when I was talking about Sin, but that was.
Oh yeah, I didn't even. That didn't come in my head. Now that you say that.
Sickly was on Sin, but Chance for the Chancers was also recorded, was written in the studio over a real short period of time. So I was correct about that, wrong about which album was on. I think with Eighth Wonder, I think we wanted a bit more of a mature offering.
Yeah.
I think we wanted Eighth Wonder to be kind of our disintegration, if you will.
Man, I love you said that because it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I mean, I almost, and I mean, they were years apart, but I almost kind of in my mind, I have those albums kind of like next to each other because of the tone and the vibe. And I think it also goes to show how much album artwork can affect how you feel about an album. I mean, if we had released Picture of the Eighth Wonder and it was like a clown on the cover, I think it would kind of emotionally almost take you in a different direction.
Yeah.
But instead, the cover is a little bit mysterious and it's a bit darker, right? It's not, you look inside and the pictures and the color palette and all this stuff is a bit more brooding and dark, mysterious. All things, by the way, that I think are absolutely true of The Cure Disintegration, right? It was darker, mysterious, brooding, maybe a bit more long-winded about some songs, right?
Sure.
We started off Eighth Wonder with Rail.
It reminds me what you just said about The Cure. It just totally, it sounds like, this, like, absolutely. It totally makes sense.
Yeah. And, The Cure had done that for a couple of albums, right? With The Kiss on Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, which, by the way, is an incredible musical song. It's one of my very favorites to put on vinyl.
Yeah.
Turn up the receiver and listen to that first song from Kiss Me, because that boom, boom, and the drums and the kick, and it like makes me shiver. Like I'm shivering a little bit just thinking about it now because it has such a cool feeling to it. I don't think they captured it quite as much with the Plain song, the first song on Disintegration.
Sure.
Although it's very epic.
Yeah.
But it's more epic from like a concert hall sort of thing, rather than playing in front of 300 people and just like blasting this low end groove. But I think you can see a lot of The Cure in A Picture of the Eighth Wonder. I mean, we were never real shy about our influences. We never went out of our way to rip anybody off, but it was kind of a, sincerest form of flattery sort of thing that we might hear something we love and be like, we want to create something like that. Yeah. And Eighth Wonder really had that again. I think there was a maturity to most of it. We also didn't have demos for a lot of these songs.
Wow.
Or necessarily had written or recorded much of the album. And I think I've probably changed my comments on this over the years, but maybe we went into Eighth Wonder with like 4 songs.
Wow.
And so we went back to the studio that we had been tracking in, which was Avast. So our history there was the guy that owned Avast, Stuart Hollerman, who's done some awesome stuff. He owned Avast. We went to him when we were doing Star Studded and said, can we rent some gear from you? So we rented an 8-track 1-inch reel, and that's what we recorded Star Studded on, and then we mixed it in the studio down the hall. So when it came to mind size for tracking drums and bass and a few things like that, we went to Avast and just did that there. Which, by the way, Avast was where a bunch of cool records of that era,
absolutely,
indie stuff was recorded, and it was where Soundgarden would go and write their stuff.
Jeez.
So like, I think it was during Mind Size, but maybe it was during Sin. I don't know. Like Matt Chamberlain of Soundgarden. Like, we're in the studio, we're doing our stuff. It's, we paid for the time, but he just kind of walked in and sat down on the couch in the main control room and just sat there and hung out. Like, he didn't know us.
Sure.
And he wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go and hear these guys. He like had nothing better to do that day. And he's like, I'm just going to go to the studio and see what's going on and hang out and, I don't know, drink a Slurpee or something. I don't know. But we're all like, oh my gosh, right? It's pretty daunting. So, and then for Sin, we went back there again to track and to write a lot of our stuff and then mix elsewhere. Straight Six we did in a different studio that was a mile away. And then for Eighth Wonder, we went back there again. We're like, this is just our studio. Yeah. We know we love the room. We love the gear. We know that it's priced right. We know how Aaron had, actually, this was worth mentioning. Aaron also at this point had been working on engineering and working with other bands and producing some stuff. And so that was kind of his studio of choice, and because of it, he was very familiar with it. He knew what gear they had. He knew what board they had. He knew what reels, what tape machines they used, and all this kind of stuff. So, and in that case, familiarity really helps a lot because you're not spending so much time trying to figure out how to use the gear. You can spend more time writing and recording than technical stuff. Yeah,
sure.
So it was a real natural choice for us, and we went over there again, just a few songs, and we rented out the space for we had the studio for 2 weeks. Okay, we're gonna let's put out a 12-song album. I don't even remember how many songs were on the album. I think maybe 11. You guys, the lines are open right now. If anybody wants to call in, it's 1-800 Jeremy Alan Gould.
Yeah, I think it's 11. I'm trying to count and listen to you.
What? I think it's 11. Yeah. Why didn't you name this podcast Solid Gold?
I actually have thought about that. I honestly.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know. I definitely thought about it. Or the golden hour. I've talked about it. Trust me. I get it.
Yeah, or the golden shower. That would be a completely different podcast with a different audience. But
I mean, there could be another a podcast in the future that might incorporate some of those names, not with the shower. But yes, I have thought about it.
It just depends on how much money you want to keep throwing away at podcasts.
Touche.
Oh man, I joke because I hear you. I get it. How much will I pay you to listen to my art? So we went in there and it's like, okay, we're gonna do this album, and we're like, okay, we got 4 songs, well let's get those put down, right? And we're like, okay, it's 4 songs. We have it mostly done. We're going to mix it later. We'll come back to them for some overdubs or whatever, but you gotta have the main parts. And we're like, okay, now we've got 10 days to do, 7 songs. And then a day would go by and we wouldn't have another song written yet. And nothing was figured out. We're like, okay, well, we've got 9 days and 7 songs. And then we're like, okay, well, we've got 5 days and 4 songs to write. And it just kept squeezing like this to where I think we're finally like, we've got 2 days and 3 songs. It ended up, I don't enjoy having the time constraint. I will say that we were a band that probably thrived most under a little bit of pressure. We were an incredibly undisciplined band. If you're like, hey guys, we're going to play our biggest show ever, we need to knock this one out of the park, we're like, good, because we're going to rehearse for 45 minutes and call it good. And it's just how we were. We were lazy, we were undisciplined, or we just would rehearse and we're like, we got it, right? And we'd move on. There was always the kids in school that a big test would come up and they're like, I was studying for 3 hours for this test. And then there was the rest of us and we're like, I hear you, because I studied for 20 minutes.
Totally.
You're looking through your notes and you're like, first of all, I don't even know what I wrote here because I can't read my handwriting.
That's amazing.
And then you look at the stuff you wrote down and you're like, I got that, because you're looking at it. You're like, I got that.
Yeah.
And so you feel like you've studied, right? There was no discipline to it. This is how I was as a student. Like, if it came easy, great, I could skate by. But as soon as it became difficult,
yeah,
I wish I could say I would hunker down and put in the time, but instead I'd be like 20 minutes in, I'm like, I got this.
Yeah.
And then I would go and take the big test and shockingly did not remember it and would fail miserably.
No, I get it.
But so that's kind of the band that we were, right? We were just like, we got this. And then, you get done with it and you're like, well, we probably could have worked a little harder at that. But, in the recording process, things just compressed. And we did kind of step up, right? I mean, we write stuff and there was kind of that, the pressure made a little bit of a diamond out of some of the things. Now, if I don't like that time constraint in recording, I like it even less in mixing, because I would love to be able to go in, mix an album, listen to it for a month, and then go in and fix things.
Yeah.
Because you end up going, it's good enough. Or people are annoyed and they're around you and you're like, I just want to go record that vocal. And they're like, dude, really? Like, it's good enough. And then you walk away kind of annoyed because you wish you'd done it better, or you wish you'd done another part, or you wish you'd mix this differently or whatever. If I have any regrets about Picture of the Eighth Wonder, it's that I wish we could have stepped away and come back and fixed a few things. But we recorded, and again, wanting to do something different. Like, we just never really wanted to repeat ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
For better or for worse, right? But we never wanted to repeat ourselves. And we're like, we love Gene Eugene. We stayed at his place when we were recording Mind Size. I got to go to a Dodgers game with him. We hung out in his kitchen. We chatted about stuff. He told us stories. I mean, so much fun. And, like Adam Again Dig, like, I don't know if there is sonically many albums that are much better than that. I mean, it just sounds so good. He was really a master. And his has been missed for years now. But we wanted to mix with him. We're like, we want his particular imprint, on this album. So we went to yet another studio, one that was called Stepping Stone, I don't remember why we went there. I think Aaron probably had done something there, and so we're like, cool. If it's a cool studio, has a good room, let's go mix there. We flew Gene in. I think he showed up and like hadn't brought any extra T-shirts with him or something, and like had to go buy some. I mean, Gene was just kind of a funny guy, but he was absolutely just one of the sweetest, nicest people you could ever meet.
Yeah.
He had never heard these songs. He pulls up the tape. We kind of give him a little bit of a quick mix as far as, there's a part here and a part here, and he starts to listen and give feedback. And then at some point, and this is true for a lot of albums, if somebody else is mixing your album, they're like, okay, I got it. Why don't you go away for a bit? I'm going to work on some stuff. I'm going to make the kick drum sound how I think is best, the snare, right? And that means you fade everything else down and you've got the kick going. And you're sitting there tweaking the EQ, and maybe you're putting a compressor on it, or you're doing a gate on it, or whatever, right? You're doing all these things. And if you're the band and you're sitting there listening to that, you're just kind of losing your mind. So he'd be like, go away, let me do what I do. And then he'd bring us back, and he would step away from the board, or he would walk outside to give his ears a rest, and he would let us listen to it. And then he'd come back in and we'd go, well, what if this, what if that, right? And so we would make adjustments from there. And you kind of rinse, repeat. I mean, that's really how the mixing process often works.
Sure.
And we had a great time hanging out with him, getting to know him, going out to dinner with him. Or, I mean, when you were done in the studio, it's like, what are we going to go do now? He didn't know anybody in the area, so we would just kind of hang out with him or show him our favorite restaurants or whatever. Yeah. And sonically, I love Eighth Wonder.
That's great.
I think it really hit on everything that we were trying to accomplish. There are a few things that I would change, and probably the most is there are a few parts where I wish a portion of a song would have kicked in louder, would have been more impactful, right? Just that kind of stuff. But it's not like, I wish we had a guitar here, or I wish we had changed the drums here, whatever. It's just parts that I wish maybe had been more powerful than they were. But I love that album, and it's the one that that and Waiting Room are probably the ones that I listen to the most. But maybe it's also because they're the newest ones, right? I mean, newest, right? Kind of in air quotes. Yeah. But as you know, it wasn't too long after Eighth Wonder that we decided to call it quits. It wasn't because of infighting. It wasn't because we weren't getting along. It really was. Life had finally caught up with us, and while we're doing this stuff and recording and trying to tour and all this stuff, meanwhile, Aaron was married and had a kid. Nick got married in 95. I got married in 95. We're recording Eighth Wonder in 96. So 3 out of the 4 of us were married. And we weren't able to make a living off of the band by any stretch. I mean, right? I mean, I had a normal job, and it got to where the band had taken a back burner so much just to make the rest of life work.
Sure.
That it's like, do we call it and just stop it here, or do we keep stretching this out and continue to dilute it for years to come. And again, kind of like TV shows that should have stopped after season 4.
Yeah.
And they just keep dragging it out, and it's not as good.
Yeah.
And so we stopped. It was a tough decision. I mean, in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, we were really at the height of our creative output and our popularity and having bigger shows than we had ever had before, and better albums than we had ever had, and this kind of stuff. And it was like the whole thing came to kind of a skid. But it was the time.
Yeah.
And and then also, as 5 years later, which felt like an eternity at the time, it was, Aaron had continued on with, Aaron and Nick continued on with Rose Blossom Punch, kind of the year after. Jesse was drumming for some bands, right? Whether it was Starflyer, Morelos Forest, Dead Poetic, right? Stuff like that. Aaron was recording a lot more, doing some solo stuff. I mean, there was still a lot of stuff going on musically, especially for the rest of the guys. And I wasn't really doing anything musically at that point, but 5 years later, Aaron, Nick, and I got together at a restaurant and just kicking around the idea, like, what if we did another album, right? And Aaron at that point was working very closely with Tooth and Nail. He was kind of like their in-house engineer producer, right? Which is why his name in his thumbprint was on so many albums of that time. And so we had kind of an automatic in. He's like, first thing, we're like, if we don't record something now, then when?
Yeah.
Right? Like, when is going to be the right time? And 2, we knew that we weren't going to have to shop around and find a label, all this, place to record and all this stuff. We knew that we could go chat with Brandon. I mean, he was living, in Seattle, still does, but he was living there. The label was there, everything. And we knew we could just go to him and say, hey, man, we want to do another album. He'd be like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so that's what happened, right? And so now it's 4.5, 5 years later, whatever. And Aaron was working, pretty much full time at the Compound Studios, which was in the basement of Tooth and Nail, and then eventually moved over to another part of Seattle. But we then kind of had carte blanche a little bit to go in there and record and write some stuff. It wasn't an endless period of time.
Sure.
But we at least could kind of stop and listen and fix. I think the thing that is most bizarre about the waiting room, and I don't know that a lot of people are necessarily aware of this, but the majority of that album wasn't recorded with the whole band there.
Wow.
In fact, a number of the songs, and I don't know what number, but it may be half or more. Jesse back in New York had gone into the studio, his own place, and recorded a bunch of drum things, and would do changes and then record something different and something different and something different. And he had all this stuff. And he sent it to Aaron, in like half the songs on the waiting room were it was all Jesse's drumming. Don't get me wrong, nobody else did it. But it was Aaron taking these drum parts that Jesse had recorded and it was reassembling them for the song.
Wow.
So, the album was done, and Jesse had actually never played that song from beginning to end like that. He had played all the parts.
Are you freaking kidding me?
You never, again, like half the songs were that way.
Wow.
They were assembled from bits and pieces, which was pretty crazy. I mean, that was one of those albums where we're writing, we're recording, and we would do some stuff and come in the next day and also working jobs, right? Because of the time in our ages. And Aaron would have been messing with a bunch of stuff, and we come in the next day and all of a sudden the song sounds way different than it did the day before, but we're like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it was the results of the album are great. The recording process was weird. It wasn't at all like the previous albums. There wasn't the cohesiveness, everybody in one room, sort of thing, right? And also life was in the way. I mean, it was, you're like, well, dude, I get off work at 5, but I can come by for like 4 or 5 hours tonight and record stuff, sort of stuff, which a lot of bands have to do later in their career, right? But the waiting room is very different in that regard.
Yeah.
It was a lot more assembled, and the songs are a lot more kind of like individual projects rather than the whole album being this
cohesive thing.
Cohesive thing. Yeah.
How do you feel about it overall? I mean, now that having you said that I could see it being, looking at it differently, but I think as a whole, it's a fantastic record. Like it's probably my second favorite. And I just hear the maturity of it all. I think like you were talking earlier, the maturity of the band. I think obviously, and of course it's your last record, but it's like, it is the most mature thing you guys have put out by far. It
was definitely, there are songs on there that for sure I think are amongst the best that we had ever written. The overall production of it, all of our previous albums had been recorded on tape. They were very analog. It was old school. It was, splicing tape to fix certain things, etc. Waiting Room was all digital. So it was the first thing we had done, not the first thing Aaron had done, because he had been working with like Pro Tools and stuff for a while at that point, but it was the first thing we had done that was all digital.
Yeah.
And it was a very different process. And the first time that I saw Aaron like in there adjusting my vocal tracks, in doing some like pitch correcting, I think I had a mild heart attack and shed a tear sort of thing. I was like, what? He's like, dude, this is just what you do, right? I mean, we didn't use auto-tune, but there was still like minor tweaks and things, because that's what you could do then, right? Yeah. And you get to the end of a bass part, and instead of just leaving the track open where there's air, you would cut that part of the track out to be complete silence, because in a digital world, it didn't need to be there. You could clean it up.
Yeah.
And it was bizarre in that sense, but obviously allowed you to do a lot more. But how do I feel about it? It was a bit too clean. I preferred the grit and the vibe and the darkness and the analog feel of our previous stuff more.
Sure.
Nick and I have had this conversation. He also has some real strong opinions about digital recordings of that era specifically that all of them are pretty much Pro Tools because that's what people were using. And it really was this era from about, 99 to, I don't know, 2009 or something, where there was a real sound about albums in the early digital Pro Tools era that had a certain sheen to them.
Yeah, I get that.
And it may be that people were cleaning up stuff too much because they could. Or it may have been that the digitizing of certain things then hadn't reached their maturity, and so they weren't capturing, an analog vibe as well as they can today. But there is a vibe to it that it's not that there's anything wrong with it, but it doesn't have quite the same analog feel to it like we were used to. So I think some people heard that album and they were like, whoa, this is like polished, and it's kind of was more poppy, and it was very put together. And I think some people were like maybe taken aback by it a little bit because they were maybe expecting the extension of Eighth Wonder. But it was 5 years later, and it was like, well, what kind of album would we write 5 years later? And I think it captured that fairly well.
I agree with you completely. I totally do. I think it's the next extension, the logical extension, obviously. Yeah, the production-wise, it was slick. I mean, at that time, that's how it kind of sounded. And I think, I think overall the songs were strong. So it's like, to me, the I'm not really a sound person per se, but I just enjoyed the record overall. And I just think, even down to the artwork, everything about it, I loved it,
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. There was a slickness to the artwork, right? It was very, clean cut. There wasn't really a grit to it or any of that stuff. But I think the whole package in and of itself ended up being cohesive to itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you had heard that album, but all the artwork was like grungy, and you're like, well, it doesn't really fit, right? But I think it did fit itself.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, I enjoyed listening to that album. Is there stuff I would fix? Absolutely. But there's also stuff on there that I think is, The Waiting Room, the song itself, the last track on the album, is probably my top 5 of my favorite songs that we've ever written. I mean, I think the song is incredible. Sometimes you step back at stuff that you created, you're like, how was I a part of that?
Yeah, I bet.
Because you surprise yourself, right? And that was definitely one of those tracks where I'm like, I don't even get it. I don't know how I was a part of that, but I think it's really cool.
What's your favorite song that you guys have ever written? And I think you've alluded to your favorite record, but I mean, of those two things, your favorite record and your favorite song.
Oh man, I don't know. Like, what day of the week is it, right? I don't know that I could ever pick one. I could probably pick a handful. Waiting Room would be one of them. Rail would be one of them. My World Falls Down would be one of them. All Pretty, probably in one of its forms, would be one of them. It's a Chance for the Chancers and Sickly are definitely up there. It's funny. I don't know if you saw this, but on the Poor Old Lou Facebook group, the Losers, Poor Old Losers, one of the guys on there, David, he started like a bracket, and it was like this, the final 64 college, March Madness sort of bracket. Yeah. But he started that with our songs, and he didn't reach out and be like, hey dudes, what do you think? He just did it, which is great. And people glommed onto it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And then he'd be like, this song versus this song. And he would have the the voting open for a period of time, and then whichever one won got to move on. And so it kind of whittled the songs down to where you've got the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight and the Final Four. Yeah. And then finally got down to, what do you think was the best ever, which ended up being Rail.
Wow.
And I thought that was really cool. Were there some songs that I wish had maybe made it further along? Sure. There's always a problem with those bracket systems, right? Because, even like college basketball, a team gets wiped out by another team early on.
Yep.
Where that team probably should have made it further, but they kind of hit their nemesis right away.
Yeah.
And that's just how it goes. And that happened, I think, with some of those songs. But we ended up, after that list of, I think it was 32 songs, probably.
Yeah.
Or we took the top 32, and people went out to their respective music streaming services and made playlists of those so that people could go and subscribe to it, and it has the songs like in order. So, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to whatever we did, 32. And it was like Rail being number 1 surprised me a little bit. But in general, I don't think there was a lot of huge surprises. I think a lot of it was like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I can see that. Certainly there were, if there had been some songs that ended up being like in the top 10, and I'm like, what are you guys thinking? Like, what? But it was kind of the fans' choice, right? And it was interesting rather to see how much that really aligned with, I think, how I felt about a lot of the songs. That was really fun. I really loved that whole little experiment.
That's cool. Let me ask you, overall, just looking back on the band's influence and just kind of, you said you were probably more of a band's band or whatever, but just overall, how do you feel about the band as an influence on not only people like myself and people maybe listen to this podcast, but just overall, kind of what are your thoughts on it?
It's hard to say. I think we have had a lasting effect on a subset of people, and for a lot of those people that has continued on. I mean, I think there's a reason why we still to this day have a pretty active group on Facebook, and can do some Kickstarter campaigns and that kind of stuff. But I in some ways I get disappointed because we didn't try as hard as we could have. To be like, where could we have gone if we had put in more effort? Hindsight being 2020 and all those things. From a creative standpoint, I'm very happy with most of what we've done. I don't look back and go, why did we do that? Or what was up with our marimba phase? Why did we do a polka album? We don't have those kinds of things where,
sure,
you look back and you're like, oh, that was a horrible phase for us. I think we were pretty true to ourselves into what we wanted to make. But we just were undisciplined. We were young. But I don't generally look back on it with regrets. I mean, I think it's cool. It's still cool to be able to tell people, that you could go out on any of the streaming sites and listen to all of our stuff, and still get reports from Spotify for, how many new people were listening to our tracks and, that kind of stuff. I'm almost 50, and most of this stuff was 25 years ago or more, right? Half my life ago. And so, here I am, a professional, and, people I work with that I've even known for a long time have no idea about this kind of alternate part of my life. They know me more. They know me more maybe about motorcycles, or the technical stuff that I do with the cloud and things like that. And they're like, "You're in a band?" Like, what? Which is just funny, but that's how things go.
I love that.
Yeah.
Any possible new Poor Lou records? Anything maybe in the future other than those recording of the covers?
The cover songs, yeah. That's a question that comes up, right? Like all the time. When I say all the time, I mean once a year. That there have been times in the past where I think we have honestly been able to say, yeah, I don't think so. We're at a place now where I think we can safely say, yeah, there's a reasonable chance.
Wow.
I don't want to lead anybody on. We don't have any songs right now that we're not secretly harboring an album that we're going to release tomorrow. There's nothing like that. And a lot of that's just because life gets in the way and we're all busy and all this stuff. Obviously, this Kickstarter has been a focus, and we're going to do those cover songs. But that sort of thing could also lead to the next thing. Like we do these cover songs and go, dude, that was so much fun. Let's go write a handful of songs and see where it goes. Or that was an absolutely horrible experience, and it was so stressful, and all we did was fight, which we didn't really do, to be honest, ever. But it could kind of take you one way or the other. So never say never. We definitely haven't ruled it out. We're not saying absolutely no, but we're also not all going into the studio next week to record a bunch of stuff. So we'll see what happens. I'm open to it. I think all the guys are open to it. It's just a matter of where do you squeeze it into life.
Totally.
And then also, none of us want to put out something that we're not 100% happy with.
I don't blame you.
And one of the last things I want to do is put out a new Poor Lou album and be like, this is some of the worst stuff we've ever written. Right? Like I don't want to go down that way, I don't want to go down that way.
Yeah,
I would much rather have our last album be, almost 25 years ago, and that's that, than put out something bad. But if we could put out stuff that we love and other people love,
I get
it'd be fun.
Get it.
Yeah, man. When's your next album coming out?
Never.
Never? You're going to start recording at never o'clock?
Yeah. Definitely would never do that. Although my wife says I have a good voice, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true. No, but
I mean,
who's to say? I mean, I could sing backup on a Poor Lou song. I don't know if anyone.
There we go. There it is. And then we'll turn your track all the way down. But we'll keep you on the credits.
I'll take a credit in a heartbeat.
Background vocals by Jeremy Alan Gould, and people are like, I don't hear anybody else on this song. And we're like, yeah, we did. We turned him down.
You know what's funny? Jeremy Enoch's middle name is Alan as well, and it's spelled the same way. And I used to hate my name until I discovered, him, and I was
until you saw his.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I have a cool name. Like literally. You
wanted Allen, or you just didn't want Alan at all?
I just didn't I didn't mind it. I just thought it was kind of meh. Like, I just thought it was normal. And then I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's got the same name. And I met him one time, and I was like, my name's Jeremy Allen, too. And he's like, I bet we're the only two. I was like, who's Tubby? Maybe. I don't know. It was just
who knows?
Yeah. I don't know.
We're gonna start a Facebook group for all the people in the world that start with Jeremy Allen.
Might be
And
two of us
then
in there.
yeah, real busy group.
That would suck. I actually would roll if it was just me and him in there. That'd be kind of cool in the chat room.
So was I the most long-winded of your guests?
No, actually you were not. There's someone that's longer.
Oh,
you
sweet.
actually mentioned his band earlier. But
Oh, okay. All right.
Dude.
All right.
yeah.
Obviously, you're talking about Randy Stonehill, so it's okay if you just come out and say it.
Actually, I would
Cool,
love
man.
to have him on.
Dude, that would be fun, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be psyched.
Or
Terry
were you
Taylor?
talking about Bob? Were you talking about Bob Dylan? Is that who you were talking about?
Bobby D?
Because we were talking about, yeah, Bobby D.
No,
B Dill.
no, it was
B.
it was a punk band that you mentioned earlier.
Oh, you're talking about Mike Stan. You got to be.
No, it's definitely not him.
No.
No.
Dang it. All right. Well, enough's enough.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you off the record.
Okay, we'll take it offline, yeah.
Let me ask you this. I know you can't predict the future, but what does the future look like for you?
Boy, that's a good question. You know, I feel like I spend so much time kind of living in the present and trying to keep up with things. You know, I would like for life to normalize and settle in a little bit. But I also think that's probably wishful thinking. I don't know if that happens.
Yeah.
I think you settle in for a few months and then a major thing happens, you know,
Sure.
maybe you lose your job or a family member passes away and then you're in upheaval again, or your kid goes through something and you're in upheaval again. And it's probably a bit foolish for me to even be thinking to a time when life is quote unquote stable, and maybe more realistic to be like, I'm just going to try to enjoy what I have right now for the time that I have it, and wait for the next thing to come up, whatever it is.
Sure.
I would love to travel some more. I would love to get out on my motorcycle some more. I'd love to spend more time with friends and more time with family. You know, I mean, I guess I would like to continue to do things that I think are meaningful in the long term, rather than just stuff that feels meaningful in the short term.
Sure.
And, you know, because you can't take it with you.
It's true.
Unless it's a box filled with nickels that they bury you with. In which case, I've got all those nickels with me in the afterlife. Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Scott, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been so cool. I'm really honored that you spend time with me and just talk to me about, the past and kind of your future. Just really, really honored to have you come on and just talk shop.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for. I know I talk too much.
Oh.
I get dinged for it all the time. I'm a talkative guy, but I feel bad that it was so tough for you and I to finally connect on this. But I'm glad that we did, and you know, let's do it again. In fact, let's do it again. But let's get the whole band on here.
Bro,
and
let's do it.
Yeah. And, you know, we'll have some other topics or whatever, but get the whole band on here because it's hilarious chatting with those guys.
I would be psyched. Out of my mind.
Yeah.
I might not even show up.
Yeah. Be like, you guys have a great time. Special guest.
It's like AI.
Yeah.
Oh. Dude, you rule. I really appreciate you for real, and your friendship over the years just meant a lot. So, man, just really honored again, and man, hopefully we'll hang soon, and we'll do an episode with the band soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. Good to chat with you, man, and obviously all the best in the future.
Yep. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you, and,
All right,
and
man.
we'll talk soon.
All right, take
buddy.
care.
Hey, thank you to the listener for tuning in again and again. I appreciate it. It's been so cool. A wild ride, just over 100 episodes, and really can't believe it. So I really appreciate the support, the likes, the subscribes. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at the Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like, I've got merch available as well on merchia.com. There's links in the bios of Facebook and Instagram regarding that as well. So thank you again. I'd like to thank Scott Hunter. Awesome opportunity. Really appreciate you. So cool to have you on. It's been a while, a long time coming. So thank you, Scott, for your time. Hope to hang soon. Got some incredible artists on the horizon, guys, and you know it. Nostalgia is still a heck of a drug. The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jaron. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jaron.